outstanding, a world-class vision, a world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Teachers Talk Radio for this pop-up live stream with the Schools Minister, Catherine McKinnell. We're going to be talking in a moment about teacher apprenticeships. Just before we do that, just a quick shout out to our sponsors at Teachers Talk Radio, John Catt Educational. If you're a teacher and you want to visit their bookshop, their extensive bookshop, and grab a John Catt book, then head over to johncattbookshop.com and get your 20% off now by using the coupon code that is on screen. Of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to Teachers Talk Radio too. Catherine, I know it's been a busy day for you, so let's crack straight on with the news today that the teacher apprenticeship program was being reduced from 12 to 9 months to, well, hopefully allow teachers to complete it within an academic year. I wondered if, just to start with, you could outline what the teacher apprenticeship scheme is and what the rationale behind it is too.
Yeah, so I mean, it is a busy day. Every day is a busy day because we have so much we want to achieve to really improve and make sure that teachers and schools and all of the school communities can deliver for children ultimately, which is, I know, the thing that we're all interested in and motivated to achieve. But the announcement that we're making today, yes, is that we are reducing the length of the teaching apprenticeship scheme from 12 months to 9 months, bringing it within the school year. And really, it's about making sure that more people have the opportunity to train to teach. And actually, thank you for having me on here today, because I think if nothing else, we hope that this announcement will just raise the profile of this as a really fantastic way into teaching. And it's just another route that fantastic potential teachers can access to be able to gain that qualified teacher status, get into teaching, and really deliver on our plans to get 6,500 more teachers into the classroom by the end of this Parliament, for the very simple reason that we know recruiting and keeping and retaining our high quality teachers in the classroom is the single biggest driver for high standards in our schools. So it's great to have this opportunity to talk about it today, spread the word and make sure people are aware of this as a route into teaching, alongside the school direct salaried route, the high potential initial teacher training that people would recognise currently delivered by Teach First, and also the teacher degree apprenticeship route. And, we currently have a funded pilot particularly focused on maths at the moment for that route.
Some have sort of critiqued the sort of apprenticeship route, and they've called it like the McDonald's approach to teacher training. And they've argued that the course sort of risks sort of academic rigor. So how would you respond to those people who call it the McDonald's approach to teacher training?
Well, the number of teaching hours on the course and the number of initial teacher training hours with the provider, the ITT provider, is the same. They will cover all of the ITT course content. They still need to meet all the high standards of teaching and subject knowledge. And, they obviously need to reach those teacher standards and achieve that qualified teacher status. And, one thing we are absolutely no compromise on is that rigorous accreditation process to make sure, because yes, we want 6,500 teachers, but we want them, to be high quality. And we know that that is what drives those standards for children that we really want to see every child access in every school.
Several teachers, though, mentioned concerns about workload and burnout. I mean, we know how big an issue that is anyway, just in general. So classroom teaching time starts at a high percentage early on. So how would that be managed in the 9-month structure?
So the issue of sort of teacher workload, burnout, I guess just, teachers enjoying what they do is a really high priority for me as a schools minister, because I recognise that if being in school is going to be an enriching experience, it has to be that for the children, it has to be that for the teachers and all the school support staff too. So, I mean, the postgraduate teaching apprenticeship, they'll still have 20% of their outside of school. So 1 day a week, they get off to the job to focus on their training, their upskilling, their knowledge enhancement, but also learning those skills and techniques that we know are so vital for delivering in the classroom. And also, we know that having mentors based in schools is a really important way of supporting teachers. I actually yesterday spent quite a bit of time with a postgraduate apprentice teacher who, has actually worked in the school that he's been in for, I think, 7 years he's worked there. But he's now training up under this route to become a qualified teacher. So whilst he knows the children, he knows the school, developing those additional skills of being a teacher is something actually he feels really enhanced by being on the job, very quickly, but actually having that time and space as well to really enrich those skills, and also having people he can call on. And that's the other thing I think is really important, is having mentors, having a really supportive leadership team, having really good structures in place. And I guess one of the things, the messages we really want to get out is actually, if you need particularly teachers in these shortage subjects, maths, the sciences, languages, this opportunity is available to you as a school, but the only thing you have to do is demonstrate that you have the capacity to support that teacher to reach those levels and standards that we need to see. So it's a two-way street, and there's no compromise on the quality at all.
I mean, how will the government ensure that apprentices are properly supported then, and not being used as sort of inexpensive labour in understaffed schools?
So, I mean, as I said, that has to be part of the process for gaining the apprenticeship support framework and bringing a teacher through that process. Absolutely. There needs to be that mentoring support there. There needs to be that leadership support there. And obviously, we've got the ITTT core content framework and the early career framework, and there is very clear guidance and requirements set out by the Department for Education to make sure that those standards are adhered to. And I think having these different routes into teaching doesn't necessarily mean a lowering of standards, not in any way. And the thing that actually strikes me when I've spoken now to a few apprentices within schools, and I think the difference for them is they're coming to it actually usually with other experience. So, they may have worked within as a special educational needs supporter, but not with qualified teacher status. They may have worked with children. I've met someone, that has done sport and PE and really worked with children in that way. They have loads of it, or they might have worked actually in other things as well, like youth work, social work. And then they bring all of that skill and experience and they bring that into school. And then to add on to that, then the qualification to actually be a teacher, which is no small feat. And I really admire the people that are undertaking these apprenticeships, because obviously they're doing that whilst working full time. And I think for them, many of the ones I've spoken to, it wouldn't have been an option otherwise, because they couldn't just drop out and study for a year. They've got a mortgage, they've got family, they've got responsibilities. It wouldn't have felt right just to say, I'm taking a year out. And there's, obviously anyone that wants to do that, fantastic. But if you don't feel you can do that, the risk is that you reach a ceiling on where you think you might be able to take your passion really for children and serving them in a school environment. But through this, it unlocks that opportunity to gain that qualified teacher status and really enrich your life as a teacher and as someone that really is passionate about working with young people. And also clearly it's enriching for the school as well, because you've got someone with loads of experience that now can teach the children in the way that they want to. So it's win-win as far as I can tell.
And how do you foresee schools being supported in this then, in terms of trying to get more apprentices into schools? So what's the plan with the schools themselves in terms of how you're going to help them to be able to do that?
Yeah, so we're actively supporting particularly secondary schools to recruit more secondary postgraduate teaching apprentices, and particularly in the key subjects. We are so determined, and I know teachers want this too, that teachers want to teach their specialist subject. And we know that children really benefit from having a teacher who has that training and background and knowledge and love of their specialist subject. So we increased the grant funding particularly for secondary, and particularly in the subjects that we know schools are, needing extra teachers. And we've seen a 68% increase in the trainees recruited, which is absolutely fantastic. But I guess the thing that strikes me, though, is there are probably that and double again of the number of people that are qualified and would qualify to undertake the apprenticeship, but there aren't the places available for them to do it. So it really is a case of making sure that schools are not missing out on this opportunity, and they can offer those opportunities to the would-be teaching apprentices that want to have those opportunities as well.
I mean, we've talked about this reduction. I mean, okay, it's sort of 3 months, isn't it? Well, it's essentially, I guess, an extra term, isn't it? Plus potentially a summer holiday. But I mean, what reassurances can you give to sort of future and present apprentices that, the quality, despite the reduction in the time, is still sort of going to be there? I mean, you've sort of touched on that already, but do you sort of see that as it's not going to have any impact on that, or do you see a bit of an impact on what's actually been provided through it?
No, not at all, because the current 12-month minimum duration of apprenticeship is longer than the typical 9 months of an academic year. And that's the duration of other ITT routes. So really, it's just bringing the apprenticeship model into line with what other teacher training and initial teacher training apprenticeship routes. And it means that you can then acquire that at the end of the academic year, and you will still cover all the same content, and really you can get going. There's no waiting for what is a notional administrative and bureaucratic period to be able to kick off your teaching career. And you can imagine, if you've undergone all that intense training, you are ready to get going in your career, particularly if you've gained that qualified teacher status and you're just waiting for that. And to be honest, like generally speaking across the board as a government, we are really trying to look hard at some of the bureaucratic hurdles that might exist to unleashing opportunity. You may have noticed that we talk about the Department for Education as the Department for Opportunity, and it's all about breaking down barriers, whether that's breaking down barriers for the children, whether it's from the earliest years, getting the best start in life, getting them into school, but also breaking down barriers for teachers and would-be teachers to make sure that they can get on and qualify in the most appropriate and practical way possible, without compromising on quality, but breaking down those barriers to make sure that we really encourage people to come into the profession. And I guess I'm sure through your podcast, you do a great service in really, promoting the importance and the status of teaching. But, I can't underestimate how much we value teachers. And I mean, the whole support staff who work in a school, and how we really want to support schools to encourage more people into teaching, but also encourage schools to be able to hold on and retain fantastic staff. And if that means making sure that somebody that they might have had on their staff team for years working in a function with children, and actually, but for having the opportunity sooner, would make a fantastic teacher, this is the opportunity to give them that chance to gain those skills, to climb that last bit of the mountain and reach that qualified teacher status that is of real value to them. And from what I understand from the schools I've spoken to where they have this opportunity, they are absolutely delighted to have that brilliant team member stay in their school and not have to take their skills elsewhere.
If this apprenticeship reform and the program in general is successful, I mean, what do you hope impact that's going to have on the teaching landscape in this parliament? Do you see it as a significant thing, or do you just see it as part of the wider picture of things you're trying to do?
I think in many ways it is just part of the wider picture, because, you know, there are people come into teaching in all sorts of different ways and through different routes. And I actually think that's the wonderful thing about teaching, because I think the more you can accommodate and welcome in a whole wealth of experience, and, you know, I don't think there's any bad way into teaching, as long as you come into teaching and you are, you know, you get specialized in the subject that we know children will benefit from. So we just want excellent teachers for every child. And so I think to increase the routes for people to reach that status is really what we are keen to do as a government. There should be no barriers to, you know, getting into teaching. If you have the right attributes, if you have the right you know, qualifications, or can get those qualifications with the right support. We're all about breaking down the barriers.
We're running out of time now, Catherine, so just a couple of quick fire questions on a few other bits. So you might have seen that actually on Monday, Catherine Burbelsing was on Teachers Talk Radio talking about her march that she's doing, which is sort of against the schools bill. And one of the things she actually mentioned in there was about QTS, and she was sort of critical of that on TTR, talking about how she didn't think QTS was actually important. I mean, I wonder, just in the march in general, whether you have any comments on the march, whether you know, any comments on her sort of opposition to the schools bill.
I have to be honest, I haven't seen anything about a march. Obviously, the Children's Wellbeing in Schools bill has made its way through the House of Commons. It's now going through the House of Lords. And I think it's been a really important opportunity to take through what are really important landmark changes to children's safeguarding, but also really practical changes within a school context. You know, we're bringing in changes to the uniform rules so that children can have a smart uniform, but doesn't make their families poorer, which unfortunately is too much the case at the moment. We're bringing in breakfast clubs, and the changes we're making within the school system are, you know, to ensure that local authorities can cooperate with all the schools within their local area to make sure every child has a school place and we have them in the right areas. And then, you know, as you say, to legislate for qualified teacher status for teachers. And obviously, I think if you meet any of these postgraduate teaching apprentices, they will tell you what that means to them and what that means for their teaching. And, you know, I've spoken to quite a few now, and the message is really clear that they value being given the opportunity to get that qualified teacher status. And the schools really value the support that comes for that individual within their profession and the contribution they can then make to the school. So I think broadening those opportunities and making it a requirement that you are supported to get that qualified teacher status, because teaching, you know, I think your podcast listeners, I'm sure, will know it can be tough, and you need a really strong skill set. You need that support, you need that training, that mentoring. It's really valuable, and we want that for every teacher, to be able to give that really high quality teaching to the children that we know will benefit from it.
Last question, Catherine, just on because there was you talked about routes into teaching. I mean, one of the big sort of reasons and factors that many teachers leave is because of the sort of school environment and what happens to them inside a school. And some have come up with the term toxic schools, right? That's a term that has been used for many, many years. So is there anything you're sort of thinking of doing that sort of might tackle that, in terms of, you know, cultures that aren't really helping in terms of recruitment and retention, particularly retention?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, if we're going to tackle this recruitment, and as you say, the best recruitment policy starts with a good retention strategy. If we are going to tackle this, you know, we need to make sure that we take the steps that are necessary. So clearly, I am listening really hard to the sector, listening to teachers, listening to school leaders. And I think particularly we're looking at where schools are doing this really well. And, what is it that makes a school environment have that really good retention rate that staff feel part of? And I think in extension to that the children feel they really belong to as well. And I think that's really important. So, we've got the targeted retention incentives. Clearly, finances can sometimes play a part in this. Clearly, we recognise teacher pay is really important. That's why it's one of the first things we did was implement the 5.5% pay award. That's 17% pay rises now over the last 3 years. We recognise that that's been an important factor. But again, pay isn't everything. And I think you quite rightly reference just the general environment and the working conditions of teachers. So, we are looking at the working practices. Schools, we've got flexible ambassador schools for flexible working to really showcase what can be done within a school context. And just, you'll know as well that one of the first things we did was remove the headline grades for Ofsted, which was one of the things we were asked to do. We are listening, we are responding, we're taking action, but obviously, we know there's more to do. And until we get that 6,500 more teachers, but as you say, get those teachers staying in the profession, then, it's not job done.
Catherine, thank you ever so much for your time this afternoon, and have a good rest of the day. Hope it's not as busy as the one leading up to this.
It's really lovely to meet you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye.
Outstanding, a world-class vision, a world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused